Que feriez-vous si votre foyer devenait votre prison? Quand la père remplace l'amour? Aujourd'hui, découvrez l'histoire d'Emma et de son chien Max. Pages dans un cycle de violence que personne n'y voit. Ce n'est pas juste un récit de souffrance, mais un puissant témoignage de renaissance. Vous n'y devinerez jamais comment un simple acte de courage changera leur destin pour toujours. Abonnez-vous et dites-moi dans les commentaires de vous regardez cette vidéo que pourrait sauver de vies. In a craftsman-style home nestled in a quiet Massachusetts suburb, sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across hardwood floors. But no amount of natural brilliance could penetrate the darkness that had settled over Emma Donnelly's spirit. At 34, her once vibrant green eyes had dulled, her auburn hair, now often pulled back in a hasty ponytail, had lost its luster. The small scar above her right eyebrow served as a permanent reminder of the first time Jack had lost his temper. "What's for dinner?" Jack's voice boomed from the entryway as the front door slammed shut. 6'2" with broad shoulders and calloused hands from his construction work, Jack Donnelly cut an imposing figure. The kind of man who commanded respect in public, charming even, but behind closed doors, his smile vanished like morning mist. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she stirred the pasta sauce. "Spaghetti bolognese. Your favorite. It'll be ready in 10 minutes." From his spot by the kitchen island, Max, their 3-year-old German shepherd, raised his head, ears perked forward. His intelligent brown eyes followed Jack's movements with wary attention. Once a playful puppy who bounded through the house with boundless energy, Max had learned to read the atmosphere, to anticipate the storm before it broke. "This place is a mess," Jack muttered, tossing his keys onto the counter with enough force to make Emma flinch. "What the hell do you do all day?" "I had a double shift at the hospital," Emma replied softly, referring to her work as a nurse's aide. "I just got home an hour ago." Jack snorted, opening the refrigerator and grabbing a beer. The sharp hiss of the can opening punctuated the tense silence. "Excuses. Always excuses." "It's not an excuse, Jack. Did I ask for your opinion?" His voice dropped an octave, the dangerous tone Emma had learned to fear. He advanced toward her, beer forgotten on the counter. "You think I want to come home to this after breaking my back all day?" Max stood up, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Jack shot him a venomous glance. "And control your damn dog. One of these days, Emma." "Max, go to your bed," Emma whispered, and the loyal shepherd reluctantly retreated to his corner, though his eyes never left Jack. Later that night, as Jack's snores filled their bedroom, Emma slipped out to the kitchen. Max immediately padded to her side, pressing his warm body against her legs. She sank to the floor, burying her face in his soft fur. "What are we going to do, Max?" she whispered, tears wetting his coat. "What are we going to do?" Max licked her cheek, his eyes seeming to hold a wisdom beyond words. In the pale moonlight filtering through the kitchen window, Emma traced the outline of a bruise forming on her wrist, wondering how many more she could hide beneath long sleeves and practiced smiles. The walls of their beautiful home, once a dream come true, now felt like the bars of an elegant prison. Outside, a neighbor's wind chime tinkled in the gentle breeze, the sound of freedom so close yet impossibly far away. The summer heat in Massachusetts had reached record highs that July. Even with the air conditioning struggling at full capacity, the Donnelly house felt like a pressure cooker, both literally and figuratively. Emma wiped sweat from her brow as she folded laundry in the living room, glancing anxiously at the clock on the mantel. Jack would be home in 20 minutes. Her phone buzzed with a text from her colleague. "Sarah, coffee tomorrow? Miss your face." Emma smiled sadly, typing back a non-committal maybe, knowing Jack would never approve. Over the years, he had systematically isolated her from friends and family, claiming they were bad influences or didn't respect their marriage. The rare times she did venture out socially always ended in accusations and painful consequences. Max lay sprawled on the cool tile of the entryway, panting slightly in the heat. At the sound of tires on gravel, his ears pricked up and his body tensed. Emma felt her own muscles tighten in response. "It's okay, boy," she murmured, though they both knew it wasn't. Jack burst through the door, his face flushed with more than just heat. Emma immediately recognized the glazed look in his eyes. He'd been drinking at lunch again. His foreman had warned him twice already about showing up intoxicated. One more incident would cost him his job. "You didn't answer my call," he snapped, tossing his hard hat onto the couch, knocking over a carefully folded pile of shirts. Emma's heart raced. "I'm sorry, I was in the basement doing laundry. I didn't hear." "Bullshit." Jack's fist came down hard on the coffee table, sending a decorative bowl crashing to the floor. "Who were you talking to? That guy from your work again?" "There's no guy, Jack. I've told you 1,000 times." Emma's voice remained steady despite her fear. "Dr. Matthews is 65 and happily married. He's just my supervisor." Jack scoffed, kicking the scattered laundry as he stalked toward the kitchen. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see how you dress up for work? How you're always working late?" Max had risen to his feet, shadowing Emma protectively as she followed Jack into the kitchen, determined to defuse the situation. "Your lunch is in the fridge. I made that potato salad you like." But Jack wasn't listening. His attention had shifted to the back door, which stood slightly ajar to let in a breeze. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, gesturing wildly. "You trying to cool the whole neighborhood? It was so hot today. I just opened it while I was hanging. And look at this." Jack pointed accusingly at the back porch, where several small holes dotted the flower bed alongside the steps. "Your precious dog has been digging again." Max, sensing the shift in attention, began to back away. But Jack was faster, grabbing the shepherd by his collar and dragging him toward the porch. "Time to teach this mutt a lesson." "Jack, no," Emma pleaded, rushing after them. "He was probably just hot and trying to find cool dirt. Please, don't." The sound of Jack's boot connecting with Max's ribs sent a bolt of pure horror through Emma. Max yelped in pain, trying to wrench free as Jack delivered another kick. "Stop it," Emma screamed, her voice shattering the suburban quiet. "You're hurting him. The dog needs discipline," Jack growled, raising his foot again. "Just like someone else around here." Something inside Emma, something that had been bending for years, finally broke. In that moment, watching the creature who loved her unconditionally suffering at the hands of the man who had promised to love and protect her, Emma Donnelly found her courage. "If you touch him again," she said, her voice unnervingly calm, "I swear to God, Jack, it will be the last thing you ever do." Jack turned toward her, momentarily stunned by her defiance, his eyes narrowing. "What did you just say to me?" The tension hanging in the humid air was palpable as Jack and Emma faced each other on the back porch. Max whimpered softly, curled protectively against Emma's legs. "I said," Emma repeated, her voice steadier than she felt. "If you touch him again, it will be the last thing you ever do." Jack's face contorted with rage, a vein pulsing visibly at his temple. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" He took a menacing step forward. "In my own house." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't back down. Years of submission had led to this moment, and something fundamental had shifted inside her. "This stopped being a home a long time ago, Jack. This is a prison." "You ungrateful bitch," he spat, lunging toward her. In one fluid motion, Emma reached for her phone in her back pocket and stepped backward through the door into the yard. Max limped after her, staying close despite his injury. "I'm calling the police," she stated, her thumb already dialing 911. Jack's eyes widened, panic momentarily replacing anger. "Put that down. Now." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You know what happens when you try to embarrass me." Emma backed further into the yard, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, hello." She spoke clearly as the dispatcher answered. "I need help. My husband is violent and has just attacked our dog. I'm afraid for both our safety." "You'll regret this," Jack growled, glancing nervously at the neighboring houses. The Petersons next door were known for their nosiness, and Mrs. Jenkins across the street was already peering through her curtains. "My name is Emma Donnelly," she continued, giving their address with remarkable composure. "Please hurry." Jack's demeanor suddenly changed, his face arranging itself into a mask of concerned confusion. It was the same transformation Emma had witnessed countless times when company arrived or when they were in public, the Jekyll to his Hyde. "Emma, honey, you're overreacting," he said loudly enough for any listening neighbors to hear. "Max just got a little disciplining. Come back inside and we can talk about this." But Emma stood her ground, one hand on Max's head. "No more talking, Jack. No more lies. No more pain." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Their suburban street. usually quiet save for the occasional lawn mower or children playing, was about to become the stage for the final act of their marriage. Emma watched as panic truly set in on Jack's face. "You can't do this to me," he hissed, his voice low again. "Who's going to believe you? I'm respected in this community. You're just a part-time aide with anxiety issues." Officer Diane Rodriguez was the first to arrive, her patrol car pulling up with lights flashing. A second police car followed moments later. The young officer approached cautiously, taking in the scene. Jack on the porch, Emma in the yard with an injured dog, and the unmistakable tension between them. "Ma'am, are you the one who called 911? Officer Rodriguez asked, her hand resting casually near her holster. "Yes," Emma replied, her voice breaking slightly. "My husband kicked our dog repeatedly and has threatened me. This isn't the first time." "She's lying," Jack interjected smoothly, stepping forward with hands raised in a placating gesture. "We had a little argument, that's all. The dog got in the middle of it accidentally." Emma tends to exaggerate when she's upset. Officer Rodriguez's partner, a stocky veteran officer named Davis, approached Max, who shrank back fearfully. "This dog looks injured," he observed, noticing Max's labored breathing and the way he favored his right side. "And he seems afraid of men." "I want to press charges," Emma stated firmly, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "For animal cruelty and domestic abuse." "Come on, that's ridiculous," Jack laughed, but there was an edge of desperation in his voice. "Emma, tell them you're just upset. Tell them you overreacted." Officer Rodriguez guided Emma gently away from Jack. "Ma'am, is there anything else I should know? Any injuries to yourself?" Emma hesitated, then slowly rolled up her sleeve, revealing the fresh bruises on her wrist and older, yellowing marks on her upper arm. "These are from 3 days ago. I have more." Jack's facade cracked completely. "You're really going to do this? After everything I've done for you? You'd be nothing without me." As the officers moved to restrain Jack, reading him his rights, Emma knelt beside Max, burying her face in his fur. The gathering neighbors, the flashing lights, Jack's angry shouts, all of it faded into the background. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to Max, and for the first time in years, she believed it might be true. The examination room at Bayside Veterinary Emergency Center was brightly lit and smelled of antiseptic. Emma sat on a metal stool, stroking Max's head as he lay on the examination table. His dark eyes, usually so alert and watchful, were glazed with pain medication. 3 fractured ribs, extensive bruising, and signs of previous injuries that healed improperly, Dr. Patel explained, her gentle Indian accent softening the harsh reality of her diagnosis. The veterinarian's kind eyes held no judgment as she glanced at the police report form on her clipboard. "But he's going to recover fully with proper care and rest." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The enormity of what had happened, what she had done, was beginning to sink in. After years of silence and fear, she had finally spoken up, set boundaries, called for help. Jack was spending the night in county lockup, and she was here, making decisions for herself and Max. "Can I stay with him?" she asked quietly. I don't have anywhere to go tonight." Dr. Patel's expression softened further. "Max needs to remain overnight for observation, but you can't stay here, I'm afraid." She hesitated, then placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Have you contacted anyone for support? Family or friends?" Emma shook her head. Jack had methodically cut her off from her support network over the years. Her parents had passed away before she met him, and she'd lost touch with most of her friends. "There's nobody." Dr. Patel reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. "This is Shannon Miller. She runs New Beginnings, a shelter for women leaving dangerous situations. They can offer you temporary accommodation, counseling, and legal advice." She pressed the card into Emma's palm. "They also allow pets once they're medically cleared." 30 minutes later, Emma sat in the passenger seat of Shannon Miller's modest sedan, her few hastily packed belongings in the trunk. Officer Rodriguez had escorted her back to the house to collect essentials while Jack was being processed at the station. "The first night is always the hardest," Shannon said, navigating through the quiet evening streets. At 50-something with salt and pepper hair and laugh lines around her eyes, she exuded a calm competence that Emma found reassuring. "But you've already done the most difficult part. You got out." New Beginnings was housed in a converted Victorian mansion on a tree-lined street. its location kept confidential to protect its residents. Security cameras monitored the perimeter, and a coded entry system guarded the front door. Inside, the space was unexpectedly homey. Worn but comfortable furniture, artwork on the walls, and a communal kitchen that smelled of fresh-baked cookies. "We have a private room available on the second floor," Shannon explained, leading Emma up a creaking staircase. "Bathroom is shared with one other resident, but she's very tidy. When Max is released tomorrow, we'll set up a dog bed for him." The room was small but clean, with a twin bed covered in a colorful quilt, a nightstand with a reading lamp, and a small dresser. A window overlooked a fenced backyard where a garden was visible in the fading twilight. "Thank you," Emma whispered, setting her backpack on the bed. "I never thought I would. End up in a shelter?" Shannon finished gently. "None of us do, honey. I certainly didn't, 20 years ago." Emma looked up in surprise. "Oh yes," Shannon nodded. "I was where you are now. That's why I started this place when I got back on my feet." She gestured toward a small desk in the corner. "There's a welcome packet there with information about our services, legal advocacy, job placement assistance, counseling. But tonight, just rest." After Shannon left, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, the silence enveloping her like a blanket. No need to be hyper-vigilant, listening for Jack's footsteps or his car in the driveway. No need to monitor her every word and action. The enormity of her freedom felt almost as overwhelming as her captivity had been. She glanced at her phone. 5 missed calls from Jack's brother and a text from a number she didn't recognize. This isn't over. Her hands trembled as she turned off the device. Outside her window, the garden lay in peaceful darkness, promising tomorrow's sunlight. For the first time in years, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future, uncertain and frightening, yes, but hers to shape. A future where she and Max could heal together, where fear wasn't the dominant emotion in her life. As she curled up on the unfamiliar bed, Emma realized she was crying, not from fear or pain, but from a profound relief that felt almost like hope. The morning light filtered through thin curtains, momentarily disorienting Emma as she opened her eyes. The unfamiliar ceiling, the narrow bed, the absence of Jack's heavy breathing beside her. It took several seconds for reality to settle in. She was at new beginnings. She was safe. And today, she would bring Max home. A soft knock at the door roused her fully. Shannon stood in the doorway, holding a steaming mug of coffee. "Hope I didn't wake you," she said, offering the coffee. "Thought you might need this. The shelter meeting starts in about 20 minutes in the communal space downstairs, but you're welcome to skip it today if you need more time." Emma accepted the mug gratefully. "No, I'll be there. I need to start figuring out what comes next." After a quick shower and change of clothes, Emma made her way downstairs, where 5 other women of varying ages sat in a circle of mismatched chairs. Their faces showed different stages of the same journey, some still shell-shocked, others with a determined gleam in their eyes, a few with the settled calm of those who had found their footing. "Everyone, this is Emma," Shannon introduced her. "She joined us last night." A chorus of gentle greetings welcomed her. No probing questions, no pitying glances, just understanding nods and small, encouraging smiles. "We're just going over some practical matters," Shannon continued. "Jenna has a job interview today at the hospital." As a receptionist in the pediatric ward, clarified a young woman with vibrant blue hair and a fading bruise on her cheekbone. "And Diane met with the lawyer yesterday about her restraining order." An older woman in her 50s nodded. "It's been approved. He can't come within 500 feet of me or my workplace." Emma listened, absorbing the normalcy with which these women discussed rebuilding their shattered lives. There was something profoundly comforting about being among others who understood without explanation, who had walked similar paths. After the meeting, Shannon drove Emma to the veterinary clinic to pick up Max. The German shepherd's tail wagged weakly when he saw her, his body still moving gingerly from his injuries. "He's healing well," Dr. Patel assured her. "Continue the pain medication for another week and limit his physical activity. The emotional recovery might take longer. Animals experience trauma just as we do. We'll heal together," Emma said softly, kneeling to gently embrace Max. Back at the shelter, Emma settled Max into their room on a plush dog bed Shannon had prepared. The other residents stopped by throughout the day, offering gentle pets to Max and quiet words of encouragement to Emma. In the afternoon, a visitor arrived, Officer Rodriguez, now in plain clothes. "I'm off duty," she explained, sitting across from Emma in the shelter's small meeting room. "But I wanted to update you personally. The district attorney has decided to press charges against Jack for animal cruelty as a first step. The evidence is irrefutable thanks to Dr. Patel's documentation and the neighbor's testimony." "Mrs. Jenkins saw it happen?" Emma asked, surprised. "She did, and she's willing to testify. Apparently, she suspected something was wrong for some time." Rodriguez's expression softened. "The domestic violence charges are proceeding as well, but those can be more complicated to prosecute. Are you still willing to testify?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Testifying meant facing Jack again, reliving the abuse in excruciating detail, subjecting herself to scrutiny and potential disbelief. "I need to think about it," Emma admitted. "Of course," Rodriguez nodded. "Take your time. But I want you to know, cases like yours are why I became a police officer. I've seen too many people trapped in situations they feel they can't escape." After Officer Rodriguez left, Emma spent the evening in the shelter's garden with Max resting beside her. The other residents had created a peaceful oasis there, tomato plants heavy with fruit, zinnias and marigolds adding splashes of color, wind chimes tinkling softly in the evening breeze. Her phone, which she had finally turned back on, buzzed with a text from Sarah, her colleague. "Heard what happened. Here if you need anything at all." Emma stared at the message, tears welling in her eyes. Perhaps she wasn't as alone as she had thought. Perhaps there were threads of connection still waiting to be rewoven into the fabric of her life. As darkness fell, bathing the garden in deepening shades of blue, Emma made her decision. She would testify, not just for herself, but for Max and for every person still trapped in silence. The road ahead would be long and undoubtedly difficult, but for the first time in years, it led toward possibility rather than despair. Max nudged his nose against her hand, his loyal eyes fixed on her face. Together, they watched the first stars appear in the twilight sky, each one a tiny point of light pushing back against the darkness. 6 weeks had passed since that fateful July afternoon. Summer was giving way to autumn, the Massachusetts trees beginning their annual transformation into fiery hues of red and gold. Inside the county courthouse, however, Emma felt only cold dread as she sat on a hard wooden bench outside Courtroom B, waiting for the preliminary hearing to begin. "Remember, you don't have to say a word today," Melanie Winters, the victim's advocate assigned to her case, explained. A formidable woman in her early 40s with cropped silver hair and piercing blue eyes, Melanie had become Emma's guide through the labyrinthine legal system. "This is just to determine if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. The prosecutor will present the police reports, medical documentation, and witness statements." Emma nodded, her fingers absently stroking Max's head. The German Shepherd, now officially certified as her emotional support animal, sat dutifully at her feet. His ribs had healed, though he still sometimes flinched at sudden movements. "What if he's released today?" Emma whispered, voicing her deepest fear. "Highly unlikely," Melanie assured her. "The evidence is compelling, Emma. Besides, the restraining order is in place regardless of what happens with the criminal case." The courthouse doors swung open, and Emma's heart stuttered as Jack's family filed in. His brother Mike, sister-in-law Tricia, and their adult son. They sat across the hallway, their hostile glares burning into her skin. She heard Mike mutter something about lying for attention, and Tricia's responding snicker. Max sensed her distress, pressing his warm body closer to her legs. Emma focused on his steady presence, practicing the grounding techniques her therapist had taught her. 5 things she could see: the polished floor tiles, Max's alert ears, Melanie's reassuring smile, the courthouse seal on the wall, sunlight streaming through tall windows. For things she could touch: her wool blazer, newly purchased for today, Max's soft fur, the smooth wooden bench, the folder of documents in her lap. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Montgomery," the bailiff announced, and the proceedings began. Emma watched in a detached haze as the prosecutor presented evidence. Photographs of Max's injuries, Emma's medical records documenting years of accidents, Mrs. Jenkins' written statement describing what she'd witnessed from her window. Officer Rodriguez testified about the scene she'd encountered that day, her professional demeanor occasionally softening when she glanced at Emma. And then Jack was brought in. He looked smaller somehow, dressed in an ill-fitting suit rather than his usual work clothes, his normally imposing presence diminished by the setting. But when his eyes met Emma's, she recognized the cold fury there, the silent promise of retribution that had controlled her for so long. "Don't look at him," Melanie whispered. "He has no power over you anymore." The defense attorney, an expensive-looking man in a tailored suit, argued that the incident had been blown out of proportion, a momentary loss of temper during a domestic disagreement. Regrettable, but hardly criminal. "My client has been a respected member of this community for decades," the attorney insisted. "He has no prior record. Ms. Donnelly, on the other hand, has documented mental health issues that call her credibility into question." Emma flinched at the casual way her private struggles were weaponized against her. The anxiety and depression she'd been diagnosed with, conditions that had deepened under Jack's systematic abuse, now presented as evidence of her unreliability. Judge Montgomery, a stern-faced woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, seemed unimpressed by the defense's arguments. "The evidence presented here today indicates a pattern of behavior, not an isolated incident," she stated. "The court finds sufficient cause to proceed to trial. Bail is continued as previously set, with the additional condition that the defendant have no contact whatsoever with the victim or the animal in question." As they left the courtroom, Jack's brother stepped directly into their path. "You're destroying a good man's life with these lies," he snarled at Emma. "Our whole family knows what you really are." Before Emma could respond, Shannon appeared beside her, seemingly from nowhere. "Back off," she said calmly. "Unless you'd like to explain to the judge why you're violating the no-contact order by proxy." Mike retreated, muttering under his breath. Shannon put a protective arm around Emma's shoulders. "Let's get you home. You did great today." "It didn't feel great," Emma admitted as they walked to the parking lot. "It felt like I was naked in public, with everyone examining every bruise, every fear, every private moment." "The justice system is imperfect," Shannon sighed. "It asks victims to relive their trauma while questioning their credibility. But you stood firm. And that's not nothing, Emma. That's everything." Back at New Beginnings, Emma retreated to the garden with Max, seeking solace among the autumn flowers. The evening air carried a hint of wood smoke from somewhere nearby, a reminder that the world continued its normal rhythms despite the upheaval of her personal life. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Claire in Oregon, with whom she'd recently reconnected. "Thinking of you today. So proud of you. Call when you're ready." Emma closed her eyes, letting the evening breeze wash over her face. The courthouse ordeal had been draining, but she had survived it. Just as she had survived Jack. Just as she would continue to survive, one day at a time, rebuilding her life piece by precious piece. The New England autumn painted the world in amber and crimson as Emma sat in the cafe across from Patricia Henderson, nervously straightening her resume on the table between them. 3 months had passed since she'd left Jack, and the preliminary trial date was still weeks away. Life, however, couldn't remain on hold indefinitely. "Your medical experience is definitely valuable," Patricia said, reviewing Emma's employment history. As the Human Resources Director for Riverside Community Health Center, she had reached out through Shannon's network, which connected survivors with employment opportunities. 7 years as a nurse's aide shows dedication, even with the gaps. Emma nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't quite feel. "I'm eager to return to full-time work. The hospital where I was working part-time. Well, it's too close to our old neighborhood." Patricia's understanding smile held no pity, only professional warmth. "We're opening a new women's health wing next month. We need compassionate staff who understand the complexities some of our patients face." She slid a folder across the table. "The position includes health insurance that would cover continued therapy, and our facility is pet-friendly for staff on weekend shifts. Would you be interested in interviewing?" "Yes," Emma said, a flutter of hope rising in her chest. "Very much so." Max, lying at her feet beneath the cafe table, perked up his ears as if sensing her cautious optimism. He had become not just her companion, but her protector, his recovery mirroring her own. The shelter's resident therapist had suggested that helping Max heal was therapeutic for Emma as well, giving her purpose when she felt most adrift. Later that afternoon, Emma stood at the entrance to a modest apartment building on the other side of town, clutching a set of keys. Shannon waited in the car, giving Emma space for this moment. "This is it, Max," she whispered to the shepherd. "Our new home." The one-bedroom apartment was on the second floor of a renovated Victorian house, small but bright, with wooden floors and tall windows. The rent was subsidized through a program for survivors of domestic violence, making it affordable on her potential new salary. Most importantly, it was in a secure building in a neighborhood where no one knew her, or Jack. Max padded through the empty rooms, sniffing corners and investigating closets before settling in a patch of sunlight in what would become the living room. His approval made Emma smile. Her phone buzzed, a text from Claire. "How's the new place? Still planning to visit for Thanksgiving? Miss you, sis." The thought of reconnecting with her sister after years of estrangement, another casualty of Jack's isolation tactics, brought tears to Emma's eyes. Claire had been shocked when Emma finally reached out, explaining years of silence. "I always knew something was wrong," she'd said. "I just didn't know how to reach you." Emma texted back, "It's perfect. Thanksgiving is a definite yes. Miss you too." The following week brought a flurry of activity. Emma aced her interview at Riverside Community Health Center and was offered the position. Shannon helped her navigate applications for assistance programs to furnish the apartment. Officer Rodriguez stopped by the shelter with an update. Jack had violated his bail conditions by driving past New Beginnings twice, and his bail had been revoked. He would remain in custody until the trial. "One less thing to worry about," Shannon noted after the officer left. "Now you can focus on moving forward." Moving day arrived on a crisp October morning. Emma had accumulated few possessions in the months since leaving Jack. Most of her things remained in the house she once shared with him, too painful or complicated to retrieve. But the women of New Beginnings had rallied around her, contributing essentials: dishes from Jenna, a coffee maker from Diane, curtains sewn by Paula. "I don't know how to thank you all," Emma said as they helped carry boxes into her new apartment. "You don't need to," Shannon replied. "Just promise to come back and visit. And maybe someday, when you're ready, you'll help someone else the way we've helped you." By evening, the small apartment had begun to feel like home. A second-hand couch and coffee table occupied the living room. The kitchen was stocked with basic supplies. Max's bed and toys claimed a corner by the window where he could watch the street below. As the last helper departed, Emma stood in the center of her living room, overwhelmed by the silence and solitude. For the first time in months, she was truly alone. No shelter mates, no staff, just her and Max in a space that was entirely their own. The freedom was both exhilarating and terrifying. She sank onto the couch, and Max immediately jumped up beside her, settling his head in her lap. His steady weight anchored her as emotions washed over her in waves. Grief for the years lost, fear of the uncertainties ahead, and beneath it all, a growing current of pride. She had survived. She was rebuilding. She was reclaiming herself, piece by piece. Outside, streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over the neighborhood. In apartments nearby, lives unfolded behind lit windows, strangers who would become neighbors, perhaps even friends in time. The normal rhythm of an ordinary street on an ordinary evening felt extraordinary to Emma, who had lived so long in isolation. She reached for her phone and opened the folder of photos she'd begun taking in recent weeks. Images that documented not her past, but her emerging future. Max at the park. The sunset from the shelter's garden. Claire's smiling face during their video call. The women of New Beginnings gathered around the dinner table. Small moments of beauty and connection that would have been impossible just months ago. "We made it, Max," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "This is just the beginning." The German shepherd sighed contentedly, his trusting eyes fixed on her face. Outside, the wind rustled through autumn leaves, and somewhere in the building, music played softly. The sounds of freedom, the sounds of possibility, the sounds of home. The county courthouse loomed against the December sky, its brick facade dusted with the season's first snow. Emma stood at the bottom of the granite steps, her breath visible in the cold air, Max a steady presence at her side. The trial date had arrived sooner than expected when Jack's attorney failed to secure another postponement. "You're going to be fine," Melanie reassured her, adjusting her scarf against the wind. "Just tell the truth, exactly as we practiced. Address your answers to the jury, not to Jack or the attorneys. Emma nodded, clutching the coffee cup that had become her talisman through the pretrial preparations. In the 3 months since moving into her apartment, she had established a careful routine, working at the health center, attending therapy sessions, walking Max in the evenings. Each day without Jack had strengthened her resolve, but the prospect of facing him in court threatened to unravel her hard-won stability. Inside, the courtroom was already filling with spectators. Domestic violence cases rarely drew crowds, but the animal cruelty charges had attracted media attention and local animal rights advocates. Emma recognized a few faces from support groups Shannon had introduced her to, their encouraging smiles bolstering her courage. District Attorney Maria Santos greeted them at the prosecution table. In her mid-50s with salt and pepper hair pulled into a severe bun, Santos had a reputation for being ruthlessly effective. "The defense has been pushing for a plea deal right up until this morning," she informed them quietly. "We've declined. The evidence is strong, and your testimony is compelling." The bailiff's announcement silenced the room. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Montgomery." As the formalities proceeded, Emma focused on controlling her breathing, just as her therapist had taught her. When Jack was let in by court officers, she kept her eyes fixed on the American flag behind the judge's bench. But she could feel his presence across the room, the weight of his stare, the familiar energy of his anger. The prosecution presented its case methodically, photographs of Max's injuries, Emma's medical records, officer testimony. Mrs. Jenkins described what she'd witnessed that day from her window, her voice quavering but determined. "I should have called someone sooner," the elderly woman admitted. "I suspected something was wrong in that house for years." When Emma's name was called to testify, Max whined softly as she rose. Shannon, seated in the row behind her, leaned forward to whisper, "We're all here with you." Emma walked to the witness stand, took the oath, and sat down. From this vantage point, she couldn't avoid seeing Jack, his face thinner after months in custody, his eyes cold. But something had changed. The sight of him no longer sent fear coursing through her veins. Instead, she felt a strange detachment, as if observing a storm that had once nearly destroyed her but now raged harmlessly behind glass. "Ms. Donnelly," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court about the events of July 15th of this year?" Emma cleared her throat. "It was unusually hot that day. My husband, Jack, came home early from work. He'd been drinking." Her testimony unfolded like a story she'd heard rather than lived. The argument, Jack's escalating anger, his attack on Max, her decision to call for help. When asked about previous incidents, she spoke candidly about years of escalating abuse, her voice steady even as she described the first time Jack had struck her, just 6 months after their wedding. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" Santos asked, addressing the question the defense would inevitably raise. Emma looked directly at the jury, meeting their eyes one by one. "At first, I believed him when he said he was sorry, that it would never happen again. Later, I stayed because I was afraid, not just of physical harm, but of failing, of having nowhere to go. He convinced me that no one would believe me, that I couldn't survive without him." She paused. "And I was afraid for Max. Jack had threatened to hurt him if I ever tried to leave." The defense attorney's cross-examination was aggressive, designed to portray her as unstable and unreliable. He questioned her mental health history, suggested she had exaggerated the incident out of vindictiveness, implied that her new independence was motivated by financial gain. "Isn't it true," he demanded, "that you're now seeking full ownership of the house you shared with my client? A property purchased primarily with his income? I'm entitled to my fair share of our marital assets," Emma replied evenly. "But that's a matter for divorce court, not this criminal proceeding." A small smile flickered across D.A. Santos's face. When finally dismissed from the stand, Emma returned to her seat, emotionally exhausted but strangely empowered. She had faced her worst fear, confronting Jack in public, having her life dissected by strangers, and survived. The trial continued for 3 more days. Character witnesses for Jack portrayed him as a hardworking, respected member of the community who had been under unusual stress. Expert witnesses for the prosecution explained the psychology of domestic abuse, the cycles of violence and remorse, the progressive nature of controlling behavior. On the 4th day, the jury retired to deliberate. "It could be hours, it could be days," Melanie warned as they left the courthouse. "Try to distract yourself." But the call came sooner than expected. Barely 5 hours later, as Emma and Max walked through the park near her apartment, her phone rang. "The jury's back," Melanie said. "We need to return to court immediately." The verdict was read in a hushed courtroom. Guilty on all counts: animal cruelty, domestic assault and battery, intimidation of a witness. Jack showed no reaction, but his brother swore loudly enough to earn a reprimand from the judge. Sentencing will be scheduled for next month, Judge Montgomery announced. The defendant will remain in custody until that time. Outside the courthouse, snowflakes drifted lazily from a darkening sky. Emma stood on the steps where she had begun the day, now surrounded by her newfound support system: Shannon, Claire, who had flown in for the trial, Officer Rodriguez, even Mrs. Jenkins. "It's over," Claire said, hugging her sister tightly. But Emma knew better. The trial was over, but the journey of healing had only begun. The coming months would bring divorce proceedings, continued therapy, and the slow process of rebuilding a life defined by her own choices rather than Jack's control. As they walked through the gentle snowfall toward Shannon's waiting car, Max trotted happily beside Emma, seemingly unbothered by the cold. His resilience continued to inspire her, his ability to trust again, to find joy in the present moment despite past trauma. "What now?" Claire asked as they reached the car. Emma smiled, watching her breath form clouds in the winter air. "Now we go home." April arrived in Massachusetts with a riot of color, daffodils pushing through soil still cold from winter, forsythia exploding in yellow blooms along fences, magnolia trees unfurling their pale pink petals against brightening skies. 6 months had passed since the trial, since Jack's sentencing, 5 years with possibility of parole after 3, and Emma found herself remarking on the season's beauty in ways she hadn't for years. "Look at those tulips, Max," she said as they walked through the community garden near her apartment. The German Shepherd, now fully recovered and thriving, trotted beside her, occasionally stopping to investigate interesting scents. "We should plant some on our balcony." Their routine had settled into something predictable yet comforting. Weekdays at the health center, where Emma had recently been promoted to patient coordinator for the women's clinic. Evenings with Max, sometimes alone, sometimes with new friends from work or her support group. Weekends often included visits from Claire or drives to the shelter to volunteer. The divorce had been finalized in February, with Emma receiving her fair share of their assets despite Jack's family's attempts to contest the settlement. Today was special, though, a milestone Emma had been both anticipating and dreading. She checked her watch and quickened her pace. "Come on, buddy. We don't want to be late." Shannon was waiting outside Emma's apartment building, leaning against her car. "Ready for this?" she asked as Emma approached. "As ready as I'll ever be," Emma replied, helping Max into the back seat. They drove in comfortable silence through town, past the courthouse where so much had changed, beyond the suburbs to a quiet residential street lined with mature maple trees. Shannon parked half a block away from a white colonial-style house with green shutters, Emma's former home. "Take all the time you need," Shannon said. "I'll wait here with Max." Emma nodded, steeling herself for what would likely be her final visit to the house she had once thought would be her forever home. The real estate agent had called yesterday with news of an offer, full asking price, with a request for quick closing. All that remained was to collect the last of her personal belongings. The key felt strange in her hand as she approached the front door. Inside, the house was eerily quiet, most of the furniture already sold or donated, leaving sun-faded rectangles on the walls where pictures had once hung. Emma moved methodically through the rooms, filling a small box with the items she had listed: her grandmother's silver locket from the jewelry box, photo albums from before Jack, her nursing school graduation certificate. In the spare room, she paused before a built-in bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of novels she had once escaped into. She selected a few favorites, then hesitated at the sight of a small, leather-bound journal tucked behind them. Her wedding diary, a gift from Claire, abandoned after the first year when the reality of her marriage became too painful to document. Emma flipped through it, recognizing the hopeful handwriting of her younger self, the pressed flowers from her bridal bouquet, the optimistic plans for the future. Rather than sadness, she felt a strange compassion for the woman she had been, naive perhaps, but genuine in her desire to build a loving partnership. She added the journal to her box, not to dwell on the past, but to acknowledge it as part of her journey. In the master bedroom, she ignored the closet where Jack's remaining clothes still hung, focusing instead on the bedside table drawer that contained her mother's reading glasses and a dog-eared copy of Jane Eyre. Her comfort read through difficult times. As she tucked them into her box, something caught her eye beneath the bed, a flash of red fabric. Kneeling, Emma reached under and pulled out Max's first collar, the one he'd worn as a puppy when they'd adopted him from the rescue shelter. Jack had insisted on replacing it with a more masculine, black one, but Emma had secretly kept this one. She smiled, pocketing the small treasure. The kitchen was the last stop, and the most difficult. This had been her domain, the one place in the house where she had maintained some autonomy. She had cooked countless meals here, stress baking at midnight when Jack was in one of his moods, sneaking treats to Max when Jack wasn't looking. She opened a cabinet and found the ceramic mug Claire had sent for her birthday 3 years ago, the one Jack had forbidden her to use because it bore the slogan, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." "I'll take that," she murmured, wrapping it carefully in newspaper. With her box filled, Emma took one final walk through the house. In each room, memories both dark and light competed for attention, but they no longer had the power to overwhelm her. This had been her cage, but also her canvas, a place where she had both lost and found herself. Outside, the spring sunshine felt like a benediction. Shannon straightened up from where she'd been playing with Max on a patch of grass. "All good?" she asked. Emma nodded, glancing back at the house one last time. All good. That evening, as Emma unpacked her treasures in her apartment, arranging them among the new possessions that represented her fresh start, her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Patel at the veterinary clinic. "Thought you and Max might be interested. We're starting a therapy dog training program for animals who have recovered from abuse or neglect. The goal is to pair them with facilities that serve trauma survivors. Max has the perfect temperament for it. Let me know if you'd like to learn more." Emma looked at Max, who was contentedly chewing his favorite toy on the balcony where her newly planted tulips caught the evening light. His journey from victim to survivor mirrored her own, but perhaps they both had another chapter ahead, from survivors to helpers. "What do you think, Max?" she asked. "Ready for a new adventure?" Max abandoned his toy and trotted over, resting his head on her knee, his soulful eyes looking up with complete trust. Emma scratched behind his ears, feeling the familiar surge of love and gratitude for this creature who had given her the courage to save them both. Outside, the spring evening settled softly over the neighborhood. Somewhere nearby, children laughed, a car door slammed, music drifted from an open window, the ordinary sounds of lives being lived freely, without fear. Emma opened her balcony door wider, letting these sounds of normalcy wash over her, no longer separate from them, but part of the fabric of a community, a world, a future bright with possibility. "Yes," she whispered to both Max and herself. "We're ready." 1 year later, the Women's Support Center buzzed with activity. Sunlight streamed through windows adorned with paper chains and colorful banners as volunteers arranged chairs in a semicircle and set up a refreshment table. Today marked the first anniversary of Second Chances, the support group Emma had founded for survivors of domestic violence, and the modest celebration reflected how far they had all come. "Max, stop sampling the cookies," Emma chided gently, noticing her furry companion's strategic positioning near the snack table. The German Shepherd, now sporting a blue therapy dog vest, gave her an innocent look before reluctantly settling at her feet. Shannon arrived carrying a large poster board. "The before and after photo display is ready," she announced. "Are you sure you're okay with including yours? It's pretty powerful." Emma nodded. "That's exactly why it should be there. Sometimes seeing another woman's journey makes the path forward seem possible." The poster featured photographs of group members, some from hospital rooms, others from their early days at shelters, alongside recent images of them smiling, working, living. Emma's contribution showed her from the day of the trial, face drawn and eyes downcast, paired with a photo from last week's therapy dog graduation ceremony, her expression confident as she stood beside Max in his new vest. "Dr. Reed is here," called Jenna, who had become the center's administrative assistant after completing her degree, and Diane brought her daughter. Gradually, the room filled with women Emma had come to consider family, fellow survivors from the shelter and support groups, colleagues from the health center, professionals like Officer Rodriguez and Dr. Patel, who had become allies and friends. Emma stood before them, Max at her side, momentarily overwhelmed by the contrast between this gathering and where she had been just 18 months ago. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice steady and warm. "When I started Second Chances, I wasn't sure if anyone would come. I just knew that helping others was helping me heal, and that perhaps my story could serve some purpose." She glanced down at her notes, but decided to speak from the heart instead. "I spent years believing I was alone, that my situation was unique, shameful, somehow my fault. But standing here today, looking at all of you, I see the truth. None of us were alone. We were just isolated, made to believe that darkness was all we deserved." She smiled. "And yet here we are, in the light." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Max, sensing the emotional shift, pressed reassuringly against Emma's leg. "Second Chances isn't just about surviving," she continued. "It's about thriving, about creating lives built on our own terms. This past year, our members have started businesses, returned to school, reconnected with family, found new love, and most importantly, rediscovered themselves." Emma gestured toward Max. "This guy taught me that hearts can heal even after terrible betrayal. Every time he trusted me despite his past trauma, he was showing me it was possible to trust again too." As if on cue, Max wagged his tail, drawing laughter from the audience. "Our therapy dog program has now paired 6 rescued animals with facilities serving trauma survivors. The animal shelter reports that our advocacy has increased adoption rates for previously abused pets by 20%. And 3 of our members have moved from receiving services to providing them, joining the staff at New Beginnings." Shannon nodded proudly from her seat. "We've accomplished so much, but there's still work to do. Our partnership with the police department's domestic violence unit has improved response protocols. Our legal aid clinic has helped dozens of women navigate the court system. But too many are still trapped, still suffering in silence." Emma's voice grew more determined. "Which is why today, I'm announcing that Second Chances has received grant funding to expand our outreach program. We'll be collaborating with area hospitals, schools, and faith communities to identify those in need and connect them with resources. No one should have to face abuse alone, and with your help, fewer will." Applause filled the room, along with a few tears. After Emma concluded her remarks, the gathering transitioned to an informal reception. As she circulated among her guests, accepting congratulations and hearing updates from group members, she noticed a newcomer hovering uncertainly near the door. "Max, come," she murmured, approaching the young woman whose bruised wrist was partially concealed by her sleeve. "Hello there. I'm Emma, and this is Max. Welcome to Second Chances." The woman, barely more than a girl, really, flinched slightly but couldn't resist reaching down to pet Max when he sat politely before her. I just came to listen," she whispered. "I'm not sure if I belong here." "You belong," Emma assured her, recognizing in this stranger's eyes the same fear and doubt she had once carried. "Whatever brought you here today took incredible courage. Would you like some coffee? Or maybe just a quiet place to sit with Max for a bit?" Later, after the celebration wound down and the young woman had left with Shannon's card and a promise to return, Emma and Max walked to the small park across from the center. The late spring evening was perfect, warm enough to shed jackets but cool enough to enjoy the gentle breeze that rustled the new leaves overhead. Emma settled on a bench, and Max stretched out at her feet, watchful even in repose. From her bag, she withdrew a small leather-bound journal, not her old wedding diary, but a new one she had started on the first anniversary of leaving Jack. Its pages recorded not sorrow but growth, not fear but hope, each entry marking another step in their shared journey. Today's entry would be significant. Just that morning, she had received notification that Jack's first parole hearing had been scheduled. The news had sent a brief, sharp current of anxiety through her, but it no longer had the power to derail her. She had prepared for this eventuality with her therapist, understanding that her testimony at the hearing would be part of closing that chapter of her life. As she wrote, Max suddenly perked up, his tail thumping against the ground as he spotted a familiar figure approaching. Claire, who had relocated to Boston 3 months ago to be closer to her sister. "Sorry I missed the celebration," Claire called, waving as she hurried across the grass. My flight was delayed. How did it go? Emma closed her journal, making room on the bench. Perfectly imperfect, like most worthwhile things. Claire sat down, immediately reaching to ruffle Max's ears. And how are you doing with the parole news? Taking it one day at a time, Emma replied honestly. But I'm not afraid anymore. That's the difference. They sat in companionable silence, watching the lengthening shadows as the sun began its descent. In the distance, the lights of the city winked on, one by one, like stars emerging in a darkening sky. You know what today really made me think about? Emma said finally. How many people it takes to save one person. Officer Rodriguez, Shannon, Dr. Patel, Melanie, the neighbors who finally spoke up. None of this would have been possible without them. And yet it still required that one moment of decision, that choice to reach for something better. Claire nodded. And now you're that person for others. Emma smiled, her hand dropping to stroke Max's head. We both are. As twilight deepened around them, Emma felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. Not the fragile calm of temporary safety, but the enduring serenity of having found her purpose. The path that had begun in darkness had led her here, to this bench, this moment, this life reclaimed and repurposed. Max stirred, rising to his feet with a soft whine that signaled his readiness to continue their evening walk. Emma stood, tucking her journal away and taking a deep breath of the spring air, rich with the scent of possibility. Come on, Max, she said. Let's go home. Together, woman and dog moved forward along the winding park path, their synchronized steps echoing the unspoken bond between them. Survivors turned healers, wounded souls made stronger at the broken places, walking confidently toward whatever adventures awaited beyond the next bend in the road. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and if you've watched until here, comment, I watched until here, and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen for you. It's very emotional.